for me, I've given this a lot of thought. It continues. This is a very rich topic. It's something that I could talk about for weeks probably. And as Elias mentioned, my wife and I work with people with their bodily health as a foundation. That's not the end of our work, but it certainly is a requirement. And so for me, I've been trying to reduce this idea of nourishment down to some other words that could describe it. And this isn't meant to be definitive, and I would certainly welcome some other insights from the group at some point here. But there are two things that I noticed that when we talk about nourishment, there are two things that happen. One is that nourishment has to do with building capacity. And you can think about this as narrowly or broadly as you like, building capacity. So what nourishes us also makes it possible for us to expand our function and to become more of what we are. So that's one aspect of it that I see. And then there's another, this is the more of the healing function of nourishment, which is it helps to sustain and restore function. Now, function is maybe a little bit of a technical word or a slippery word here, but function is really just about what is naturally meant to happen in a process, in a cell, in a relationship. It's what is healthy and what gives it life and helps it to grow. So, again, what nourishes us? What nourishes us? What builds our capacity? What restores and sustains our functions? So, for me, there's, in looking at it in that way, there's something about looking at this restoration or the building of capacity that suggests something that's pre-existing. There's something already there. We're not making something new. It's already there. And in the physiological vocabulary, the word for that is homeostasis. Homeostasis it's a very interesting word. It's returning back to sameness. It's this movement across this 0 point, back and forth, and the body is always doing this. It's doing this dance, even in our sleep, even when we're not thinking, even when we are thinking, even when we're thinking negative thoughts about the body, it's doing this work of balancing, bringing us back to homeostasis. It does it all the time. It doesn't know anything else to do. That's, in a way, that's its worship. It will do this no matter what happens. It will do this in the best of times and the worst of times. And so in this sense, Elias used yesterday this image of the great friend. And I have actually, in a slightly different way, have suggested to many people I've worked with to see their body, their physical body. Maybe it's not quite the great friend in the sense that Elias mentioned, but at least as a dear friend. And perhaps the dearest friend that you have physical connection to. Because no matter what you do, as I said, no matter what you do, no matter how you live your life, no matter how much you punish yourself or abuse your physical vessel, it's always going to give back 100% of what it has to give. It will never withhold. It will always give back everything it can. Now, that may not mean that it's going to erase 100% of what ails you. But what it does mean is that it will give back 100% of what is available from what you give it. So there's a little dance that happens there. There's this exchange that happens. There's a giving and a receiving that happens. And so this is where becoming conscious, again, through just asking this simple question, like what nourishes us? What nourishes me? And really making that a practice, a word, a phrase that comes up over and over again throughout the day. It could even be, does this nourish me? Does this nourish me? What am I doing now? Does this nourish me? And I've said to some people already that this question, I mentioned it when we were first raising this earlier, what nourishes us, I like to think of it in a plural form. Not just because it's us, it's who's in the room here and everyone beyond this room and the whole world, the whole cosmos. Okay, that's us also. But in, again, a very literal sense, this is a we, not an I, to begin with. We've done many practices to see that there is no I. Where is it? Where can you find it? It's nowhere to be found. And I like to maybe think that perhaps one of the many reasons for that is that it's because there are trillions of us in here. Trillions of human cells. I know many of you probably know these numbers. You know, over our lifetimes we have anywhere from 10 to 30 trillion human cells that make up this, that we call body or I, depending on the time. But what you may not know is that there is anywhere from 2 times to 10 times the number of non-human entities that make up this with us. Bacteria, yeast, fungus, viruses. And I shared this with the group yesterday also, but it's worth repeating. When we say I, that's all very nice, but who's talking? Who is speaking when we say this? Is it the fungus in my small intestine or the ones in my sinuses? Is it the bacteria in my colon or the ones in my fingernails? Who's talking? I don't know. But with that, to help to just intensify the wonder of the body, it's important to do a little dance with these numbers and start to feel how incredibly rich even this is. We think it's mundane because we think we're familiar with it, because we think that we've lived every day of our lives with it. It's a miracle. And to just put another little notch in our certainty about what the body is, here's another little fact, which I also mentioned to the group yesterday, and that is that if we took all of this physical form and we reduced it to genetic material, it would be something like 0.3% of all of the genetic material would be from the human cells. 0.3%, not even 1%. There's so much more genetic information coming from other, which is not other, it is also this. 99.7% of the genetic makeup of this is so-called non-human. And that's fascinating because what is this non-human stuff? What are bacteria and funguses? Where are they from? I mean, they're in the soil, they're in the plants, they're in the water, they're in the air. There are bacteria in the air that have been found in the ocean and our guts that are all the same. So what moves our bowels, moves the skies, the weather, the tides, the currents. So this sense of this body is not insignificant. And from that you can begin to see that this body truly does become the world becomes our body. The act of eating, if you just imagine that, I've spoken, some people may have heard this before from me, but I've spoken before of eating is like an act of communion. And it really, really deserves that level of honor and care. To take the food in is both metaphorically and physically to take the outside, put it in the body where it becomes the inside. And then the cycle continues, right? We eliminate what we don't need. We take in more. We digest if we're paying attention and we're settled. We absorb. The body takes everything that it can from what we give it. We assimilate We build new structures, we repair, we heal, and we eliminate. We get rid of what is no longer needed and what is poisonous. So those are all very important steps in this dance.